In 1813, in the grey industrial town of Blantyre, Scotland, a boy named David Livingstone was born into a family so poor they all shared a single room in a tenement building. His father sold tea door to door. His mother stretched every penny until there was nothing left to stretch. At 10 years old, David was sent to work in the cotton mill. 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, he fed thread into machines that could take a child's fingers in a heartbeat. But David did something no one expected. He propped a book on the spinning jenny and taught himself to read between the deafening clatter of the looms. Every night after his shift, he dragged himself to evening classes until midnight. Latin, Greek, theology, medicine. He consumed knowledge the way a starving man consumes bread. His fellow workers mocked him. His body ached. But something burned inside David Livingstone that no amount of exhaustion could extinguish. He read a pamphlet by Karl Gutzlaff, a missionary to China, and something cracked open inside him. Medicine and mission. He could use one to serve the other. He enrolled at Anderson's University in Glasgow to study medicine, walking the miles to class and back because he couldn't afford the fare. By 1840, he was a licensed physician and an ordained minister. In 1841, David Livingstone sailed for southern Africa. He was 28 years old. The London Missionary Society posted him to Kuruman, a remote mission station run by Robert Moffat. But Livingstone looked north, past the edge of every European map, and saw only darkness that needed light. He pushed deeper into the interior than any European missionary had gone before. He learned Setswana. He treated the sick. He preached under acacia trees to people who had never seen a white man. But he soon discovered that Africa would demand a price for every mile. In 1844, while defending a village from a marauding lion, the beast lunged at Livingstone and clamped its jaws around his left arm. It shook him like a rag doll, crushing the bone in 11 places. He later wrote, "The shock produced a stupor, similar to that which a mouse must feel after the first shake of the cat. It annihilated all sense of horror." His arm never fully healed. He carried that wound for the rest of his life. He married Mary Moffat, Robert's daughter, in 1845. Together, they pushed further north, dragging their young children through malaria country and desert crossings. 2 of their children nearly died from fever. Mary begged him to stop. He couldn't. "I am prepared to go anywhere," he told her, "provided it be forward." In 1855, after months of grueling travel through uncharted wilderness, Livingstone reached a waterfall so immense that the local Kololo people called it Mosi Oatunya, the smoke that thunders, a mile-wide curtain of water plunging into a gorge so deep that the spray rose like a pillar of cloud. He named it Victoriafalls and wept at the sight. But Livingstone's greatest battle was not against nature. It was against the slave trade. Everywhere he traveled, he found its horrors. Villages burned to the ground, men chained neck to neck in long columns, children ripped from their mothers' arms. He wrote in his journal, with a hand that shook with rage, "The strangest disease I have seen in this country is the broken-heartedness of the enslaved." He returned to Britain in 1856, a national hero. Crowds lined the streets. Queen Victoria received him. The Royal Geographical Society awarded him their gold medal. But Livingstone didn't come home for the applause. He came home to sound the alarm. "I beg you," he told packed audiences at Cambridge, "do not let this open sore of the world continue. End the slave trade." His fame could have bought him a comfortable life in England. Book deals, lecture tours, a professorship, anything he wanted. Mary begged him to stay. His children barely knew him. But Africa pulled at him like gravity. In 1858, he sailed back. He would never see England again. For years, Livingstone vanished into the heart of Africa. No letters came, no reports, no sign of life. The world began to wonder. Was David Livingstone dead? Disease ravaged his body. Dysentery, malaria, internal bleeding. His teeth fell out. He could barely walk, but still, he pressed forward. In 1871, the New York Herald sent a young journalist named Henry Morton Stanley to find him. Stanley marched 236 days through 800 miles of African wilderness. On November 10th, in the small lakeside town of Ujiji, he found an old, emaciated white man standing beneath a mango tree. Stanley removed his hat and spoke the most famous greeting in the history of exploration. "Dr. Livingstone, I presume?" Stanley stayed for 4 months. He brought supplies, medicine, and news of a world that had moved on without Livingstone. He begged the old explorer to come home. "You've done enough, Doctor. Let someone else carry this burden." Livingstone shook his head. "I cannot. I will not. My work is not yet finished." Stanley left. Livingstone walked on. His body was failing. He was carried on a litter by his faithful companions, Chuma and Susie, who had walked with him for years. He bled internally. He could no longer write in his journal except in a shaking, barely legible scrawl. On May 1st, 1873, in a small village called Chitambo in present-day Zambia, his companions found David Livingstone dead. He was kneeling beside his bed, his head resting on his hands as if in prayer. He had died on his knees, talking to the God who had sent him to Africa 32 years before. What his African companions did next has no parallel in history. Chuma and Susie removed his heart and buried it beneath a mvula tree, because his heart, they said, belonged to Africa. Then they preserved his body, wrapped it in bark and sailcloth, and carried it over 1,000 miles to the coast. 9 months they walked, through swamps and hostile territory, so that the world could have his body back. David Livingstone was laid to rest in Westminster Abbey on April 18, 1874. The inscription on his tomb reads, "Other sheep I have which are not of this fold." His heart remained in Africa, buried under a tree in the land he loved more than his own life. A mill boy from Blantyre who walked 30,000 miles to prove that no darkness is too deep for the light to reach.